All right, Candace, whenever you are ready, I'm ready. Candace, I'll wait for you to give me the heads up and then I'll get started.
Okay, Council. Okay, Counselor, we're recording now, so we're all set.
Great, thank you, Candace. Thank you, everyone. For the record, my name is Anissa Asaibi George, Boston City Councilor at Large. I'm the chair of the Boston City Council Committee on Education. Today, I'm joined by a number of colleagues, and some will, I'm sure, come and go as the evening progresses. I am first, I think in correct order of arrival, Councilor Braden, Councilor Flynn, and just saw Council President Janey join us. There may be others as I'm away from my script. Councilor Ricardo and Councilor Ricardo Arroyo and Councilor Kenzie Bach. Thank you very much for joining us. This is a public hearing being recorded and live streamed via boston.gov/city-council-TV. It will be rebroadcast on Comcast Channel 8, RCN Channel 82, and Verizon Channel 1964. We will take public testimony throughout this hearing. This is a public testimony hearing only. If you wish to testify via video conference, please email shane.pack@boston.gov to sign up, shane.pac@boston.gov to sign up. When you are called, please state your name and affiliation or residence and limit your comments to no more than a few minutes to ensure that all comments will be heard. You may also submit written testimony by emailing ccc.education@boston.gov. This is a hearing this evening on docket number 0979, a hearing for testimony only, public testimony only regarding the BPS reopening plan. I will give an opportunity for colleagues to offer very brief comments as we are trying to maintain the integrity of public testimony only hearing, and do want to hear from our families, from our school communities, from our students, from our educators regarding the reopening plan to date in the Boston Public Schools. Today's hearing and testimony will help inform the work that is ahead in some of our future hearings regarding the Boston Public Schools reopening plan. Next, I'll go to Councilor Liz Braden.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for holding this public hearing. I think it's really important to hear from our parents and educators and students in Boston Public Schools as we consider our plans for reopening. The COVID-19 crisis is an ever-changing, constantly changing landscape, and it's hard to keep up with the latest developments, but I really welcome the opportunity to hear from everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Breeden. Councilor Flynn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will just echo what Councilor Braden said. I'm here to listen to the concerns and comments of the public on these critical issues. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Flynn. Council President Janey.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I just appreciate the opportunity to sit in with all of you and to listen to families as they testify. I think it's really important that we hold a listening only session. So grateful for your leadership. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. Councilor Bach.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would also echo my colleagues. I just think there's nothing more important that we do as a city government than educate our kids. And I think, we all know, we've seen in the pandemic how hard it is when that's impacted, when that's, when we really aren't able to do it at the standard that we would want to be in normal times, and the long effects this is going to have on our kids. So it's just so important for us to figure out how to do the best that we can here. And I also, I just think that we've seen in this pandemic also how much education and our kids are at the heart of adults' lives, and how much it's affecting people's work and the ability to keep their families afloat financially. And so it's just a whole nest of issues. And this council's been hearing from lots of people in our emails and phone and on the street. But I think creating this dedicated space to hear from our parents, our teachers, is really important. So I just want to thank you for your leadership on this.
Thank you, Councillor Bach. Councillor Arroyo, and then we've also been joined by Councillor O'Malley, and I thought I saw Councillor Mejia join us just for brief opening remarks prior to public testimony only. Thank you, Councillor Arroyo.
Thank you, and I'll keep this short so that we can get to the public. We know that there were deep, lasting inequities in public education, not just prior to the pandemic, but since I was in Boston Public Schools, at the beginning of this decade, and likely when some other families were in public schools back in the 1980s and 90s. And these are longstanding issues with inequity and opportunity gaps that we've been trying to address and close forever. As we find ourselves in a 100-year pandemic, my heart breaks for families and teachers that are really experiencing the lack of resources and the lack of ability for us to really address the inequities that already existed on top of the inequities that are now created with the lack of opportunity to proper facilities and proper learning materials and proper online access. And so I'm very focused on hearing from our parents and from our teachers and everyone else involved in our administration of learning and in institutions of learning, and how we can try to make this better in the period that we're in for all. So thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to everyone who comments today.
Thank you, Councillor Arroyo. And Councillor Mejia.
Hi, yes, good afternoon. Thank you, Chair Councillor Asabi George, for holding this hearing and for providing a space for the members of the public to make their voices heard. Last week, our office held a town hall on the reopening plan and how it impacts students, parents, and guardians, and teachers and administrators. We were lucky to have you, Madam Chair, in attendance to listen and to provide your thoughts. We heard a lot of great input that we will be sharing. However, we also know that it's a matter of what we as leaders are going to do about it. I look forward to hearing from the people, and I hope that we can leave this hearing with some actionable items. And I would like to agree with the sentiment of my colleague Ricardo, that when it comes to issues of inequity in the city of Boston, public education, and all things that impact students who are low income and Black and Brown, we always fear to bear the brunt of all of these inequities that continue to persist. And during this conversation, I think it's really important for us to recognize that there are schools that are crumbling, schools that don't have proper ventilation, schools that have been asked to do more with nothing, and that there is a real deep conversation here around the haves and the have-nots. And I think that the kids who have not will continue to not have if we don't address this in a way that is equitable and fair for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mejia. We've also been joined by Councillor Campbell. Councillor Campbell, just a brief opening statement. I'm sorry, did I miss you, Councillor O'Malley? I'm sorry, Councillor O'Malley and then Councillor Campbell.
And
No,
that
did I-
beautiful baby. Go ahead, Councilor Malley.
Did I
Thank
miss
you,
you, Councillor
Madam
O'Malley?
Chair.
I'm sorry
My
about that.
associate and I are here to listen. Appreciate your great work on this. Obviously, I know we are all united to do everything we can in the name of equity and safety as it relates to BPS, as it relates to supporting our BPS families, faculty, staff, and others. Thank you all, and looking forward to hearing from folks.
Thank you, Councillor O'Malley. Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Councilor Sabi George. And it's so great to see them. So no, I'm here to listen. I've also been getting emails as well. So thank you for your leadership and highlighting this. Aiden also says hello. But I'm here to listen. We've also, been fielding a whole host of emails and calls with respect to reopening. So here to listen to the community and the families. So thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thank you all for being here. As I noted in my opening remarks, this is a public testimony only hearing. So we are here for a number of hours. And if there are sort of opportunities where there isn't anyone for testimony, we may take a brief recess, and I will text colleagues. I'll be here and text colleagues if members of the public do arrive. We sometimes, when we've done this in the past, we've had participants arrive in waves. So I am going to just give me a quick minute to grab my, where'd it go? My list. Sorry, for those who are testifying. So we have first to testify, offer testimony is Stephanie Nieves, Nancy Lessin, and Naomi Rodriguez. Shane, if we could allow them into the box. Let's see, I can. Stephanie, you are now with us. If you would offer your testimony, please. Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Hello, my name is Stephanie Nieves, and I'm the 12th grade math teacher at Boston Green Academy. I'm testifying today despite my very real fear of public speaking, not by choice. And I'm going to try to keep my emotions in check, so excuse me. But because enough is enough. I, like many BPS employees, families, and students, are sick and tired of the elaborate charade that BPS decision makers continue to dress up as the best reopening plan for all. While I recognize that a one-size-fits-all solution to reopening might not exist, and that there is no playbook for how to do things during a global pandemic, that does not give BPS decision makers the right to, 1, refuse to be creative or listen to the thoughtful and viable solutions that have been suggested over and over again by teachers, activists, families, and the BTU. 2, continue to change safety goalposts without transparency regarding how decisions are being made and the data and science that support these decisions. 3, negotiate with the BTU with the intent of not honoring MOA language according to what was discussed during negotiations. 4, frame teachers' legitimate concerns as a lack of dedication to teaching our high-need students. 5, unethically manipulating or representing data in order to continue to perpetuate the assertion that students and staff are safe in school buildings. 6, threaten teachers with discipline for honoring the language of an MOU and fighting for the safety of all BPS employees, students, and families. Maya Angelou said, when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. And so I ask you, after everything I've just said, how am I or any BPS employee, student, or family supposed to trust BPS decision makers or feel anything except disrespected and expendable? I am a person of color. I am queer. I am a person with disabilities. I get serving our highest need students, but I'm also a math teacher who relies on logic, deductive reasoning, and the data and science, real science, to back up the decisions we are making. And that is not happening. And so I want to ask this committee to please do something about it. The data is not even public record, all of the data. It takes 30 days to request it, minimum, before COVID. There is no transparency, and there is a lack of urgency on the BPS decision makers' part of this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. You did fantastic. I appreciate your testimony today. I'd also like to note that we have been joined by Counselor Edwards. Nancy Lessin, welcome.
I'm Nancy Lessin, a retired occupational health specialist, member of Mascosh Health Technical Committee, mother of a BPS high school teacher, grandmother of 4 BPS elementary school students. The coronavirus is airborne. Good ventilation and filtration are critical. The Build BPS study released March 1st, 2017, documented poor ventilation in most schools. It was dismissed by BPS and the Boston Public Health Commission the next day, stating that they had not found air quality in schools had a detrimental effect on health. Fast forward to 2018-19 school year, the last for which there is any meaningful ventilation data. Tests were only taken in schools with HVAC systems, about a quarter of schools. CO2 readings above 1,000 parts per million indicate poor room ventilation. One school had 25 such rooms, another 23. Two had 14, another 13. Again, 3/4 of schools, those without HVAC systems, have never been properly tested. The EPA says this virus remains airborne for longer times, traveling further distances, and supports increased ventilation and air filtration. CDC school guidance recommends portable HEPA filters. Finally, BPS is getting these for nurses' offices and medical waiting areas, but they are needed in many more rooms. One precariously placed fan in a single tilted window is not protective as infection rates climb. High-need students need in-person services, but not the choice between no services and services in unsafe environments. When faced with two bad choices, take the third. Do testing, identify spaces with at least 5 air changes per hour, and have HEPA filters. When the positivity rate went over 4, full remote was to happen. But as with the 2017 Build BPS report, the Boston Public Health Commission ignores science and is allowing expanded in-person classes in unsafe, inadequately ventilated rooms. Among BPS's guiding principles is monitor emerging scientific recommendations. We are guided by data and science. Nothing could be further from the truth. And I will send the Education Committee a report from another school district that did the kind of ventilation testing that BPS should have done last spring. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. I do look forward to that report. Next, we have Anna Golden, and Jody will be afterwards.
Hi. My name is Anna Golden, and I'm a special education teacher at the Henderson. And my daughter actually attends school there too. So I'm a parent and a teacher. I was on the meetings and on all the emails that parents received before school started, and I continue to be. And the things that we were told as families, as parents, are not things that are happening in the building. So we have been lied to. So families who are mostly Black and brown are being lied to by the district. There are not pods in the high schools as students are going from teacher to teacher. If someone tests positive, contact tracing will be possible, they said, but there has been no contact tracing. The district is not doing contact tracing at all when there are positive cases. The district is lying and saying that there are no positive cases, and teachers know that's not true. We know that there have been positive cases. On any given day, there are at most 5 kids in the building for us and up to 15 adults there to serve them. This means teachers are teaching Zooms with masks on, managing the feedback of the Zooms as multiple kids have it open, and we're all freezing with the windows open and the fans blowing with the poor ventilation. The union and the teachers at my school have been advocating since March to be part of the planning, and we are continually left in the dark and not permitted to sit at the table where decisions are being made. The numbers are as high as 8% in some of the communities where my students are coming from and where we live. We want to be serving high needs students, but this plan does not make sense. There are spaces for students to take mask breaks in the hallways, away from any windows or ventilation. Teachers who have stayed home because they feel unsafe in the buildings are receiving aggressive threats instead of support, and me and many of my colleagues are considering taking a leave instead of continuing to teach the students that we love. Different principals are treating teachers differently, and there's gross inequity across schools. Good teachers are taking leave and in some cases quitting. These teachers, I want to work. I want to work in person, but the schools are not safe as they are right now. They could be. Schools could be safe for high needs kids, but they are not right now. We need to go remote right now and give teachers real time to make plans for their students that meet their needs and keep them safe. I am continuing to stay home despite the threats I've received that I could lose my job because my students' lives matter, and I will not be a part of lying to parents. Just like Ms. Mejia said, we need to do more to make safe spaces for our Black and Brown students. The choices being made are not valuing the lives of students and teachers. Thanks.
Thank you, Anna. Next, we have Jody Sugarman. I think it's Brosen. Jody?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you. Good afternoon. Thanks so much for the opportunity to testify. My name is Jody Sugarman Brozan. I'm the Executive Director of MassCosh, the Massachusetts Coalition of Occupational Safety and Health, but I'm also a PPS parent of 14 years. MassCosh works to ensure that all workers can go to workplaces free of hazards where they can earn a fair wage and good benefits and be treated with respect and dignity, always with the ultimate goal of returning home to their families alive and well. I really appreciate being here today. While social distancing, hygiene, and cleaning and disinfecting are critical public health measures, one of the key ways that school staff and students are exposed to SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes COVID-19, is aerosol transmission of microdroplets. In other words, by breathing air that contained live virus that had been exhaled by infected individuals. On October 5th, the CDC updated its guidance to affirm that it can be spread, that COVID-19 is spread by airborne transmission. It's critical to ensure that air potentially contaminated with deadly virus is made as safe as possible for school building occupants to breathe. And in 130 BPS school buildings, only 28% even have HVAC. For the 93 schools with limited or no mechanical ventilation, it requires assessment of every classroom to see if windows can remain open, if fans and extension cords can be placed safely and strategically to bring in enough outside air for ventilation, and then adding portable air cleaners with HEPA filters where they're needed. For the 37 schools with HVAC systems, it requires inspections of operations and capacity to provide adequate outside air and upgrades to the CDC recommended MERV 13 filters. Boston Public Schools is yet to prove that buildings which already have ventilation and air quality problems before the pandemic are sufficiently ventilated. BPS conducted indoor air quality tests in every school and declared that each building passed, but this was determined by measuring the concentration of carbon dioxide in unoccupied rooms, which BPS's cover page accompanying the results even acknowledges meaningless metric. CO2 measurements are only useful as a proxy for ventilation if the room has been occupied, if there's actually a source of CO2 to measure. The Public Health Commission determined that in-person learning for high-need students can safely continue and increase to 4 days per week. Was the risk of airborne transmission of the coronavirus, which is now recognized by CDC, a factor? Did the Public Health Commission consider the status of ventilation and filtration in buildings? In the October 16th letter from Boston Public Health Commission to BPS, it concluded that an increase to 4 days per week schedules because it concluded that we could increase to a 4 day per week schedule because 10 additional students per school seemed like a relatively small number. But how many students and staff are actually in each occupied room? How ventilated are those rooms? And again, measured in air changes per hour. What will happen this winter when temperatures drop well below the standard? Will teachers continue to keep windows open and fans blowing to ensure that there's some ventilation? And how will that impact those students whose asthma is triggered by the cold, which is a real concern that we've heard from parents and families. To know if a space is safe, we need to know the rate of ventilation in each classroom measured in air changes per hour. Luckily, that's not hard to do. It's not hard to measure air changes per hour, and these ventilation measurements can be taken in occupied or unoccupied rooms. So the solution to us is simple. Use science to measure the ventilation, the air changes per hour in classrooms, find the safe space that exists within Boston Public Schools, and use the safe space only. BPS must commit to rapidly assessing ventilation, ensuring that in-person learning occurs only in safe classrooms. We know that high priority learners need services, but it should not be at the cost of their own health and safety or that of the teachers. I'll also send this in as written testimony. Thank you.
Appreciate that, Jody. Thank you very much. I also want to note that we've been joined by Counselor Michael Flaherty. Next, we have Travis Marshall. Welcome, Travis.
Hello, Counselor. Thank you very much. I'm calling just very briefly to talk about the state of our school facilities. It's no shock to anybody that they are in massive disrepair, most of them. And the fact that BPS felt that a single window cracked open several inches, a single window fixed in each classroom, is somehow enough to create the space that we need for our students who are high needs, who need to be in person right now.
Oop, Travis, we've lost you just a little bit there.
It's insulting, frankly.
So,
And
Travis, we
you know,
lost
Boston
about,
is a city.
Travis,
So
we lost
sorry.
about 30
Can you
seconds.
hear me now at all?
We can hear you perfectly right now. Just, I think, back up maybe 3 or 4 sentences. Can't hear you. Why don't I put you on hold and we'll come back?
A single window repaired in each classroom is staying. All right. Okay.
We'll come back to Travis in a minute. Next, we have Jessica Tahiraj, and then next we'll go to Tamara Shea Tanis and Emma Shea Tanis. Jessica?
Hi, thank you. So basically, I'm conflicted about the proposal. I do believe that there needs to be fairness and equality across the board, but with this cheese hole proposal, or Swiss cheese proposal, it is not equity. And when I'm talking about equity, I'm talking about the Chinese community. When I first read the proposal, that's what I saw right away, is that it did not capture the Chinese community at all. I work all over Boston. I'm a physical therapist. I go house to house. I go in the projects. I go in middle income families' houses, rich income family houses. And there's such big, huge wealth gaps in almost every single zip code. I don't see how they use the American Community Survey. I don't see how that captures that. And also, they measured it by kindergarten through 12th graders, when they should have only measured the 6th graders and the 8th graders, because those are the kids that this proposal is affecting if it's only a one-year proposal, the population is going to change every year. Are the Metco kids in this proposal? Because they're not allowed to go to Boston Latin in the research I found out.
Right.
Are charter schools that get feeded into their own high schools, are they counted in this? And then Mayor Marty Walsh makes a lot of these promises, but he may not run for mayor next year. Or he might not even get elected. So how can you make all these promises that you're not going to be around to go on your promises? And then why is another course to college, Boston Arts Academy, New Mission High, have special unique application processes are they going to change that in order to promote diversity? Also, Brockton Public Schools has a special school where you have to take an exam and they count your grade point average. And it's for kids who have special gifts and talents, like they do at these exam schools. Chicago Public Schools.
Jessica, if I could just ask you, this is a public testimony hearing regarding the reopening of the Boston Public Schools. And it is public testimony, so I want you to have your opportunity to speak. But I'd love it if you could wrap up. I was unclear in the beginning what you were talking about.
Okay, so I'm talking about
if you could wrap up. Yeah. I'd appreciate it. So you're welcome to finish your testimony. I'd like you to just do it quickly. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, sure. I really think that the proposal is not fair and equity across the border, just because, and focus on zip codes that come from the American Community Survey. I don't think that's the right move. So I'm wrapping it up for you.
Thank you very much, Jessica. I appreciate that. I do want to just circle back to Travis, if Travis is in a better spot. And then we're gonna head to Emma Shea Tanis. Travis?
Yes, hi. Thank you so much. I
perfect.
appreciate
There you are.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
So my kids just finished their lessons, so I'm taking them out for a second. But what I'm calling to say is just that I struggle to believe that in a city that is as rich in resources as we are, that we feel confident that fixing one window in every classroom is enough ventilation and enough safety precautions. I mean, stickers and hand sanitizer and soap, that's all great, but we know about the aerosolized particles. We know about air exchanges, as the testimony from Mascosh just laid out. We have classrooms, we have buildings that are 100 years old, and we have fixed one window in each classroom. And most of those windows, certainly in my own kid's school, those windows are fixed by lifting them up 6 inches and putting a fan in there. And as was also testified to earlier, once winter comes, these classrooms are going to be freezing. I know they've talked about cranking the heat up, but these classrooms in previous winters with the windows closed were oftentimes hovering in the low 60s. So I just think that we really need to, I know that we're under a lot of pressure from the state and DESE, but we need to fight for resources to do better by the schools. And we need to use what resources we have now in terms of facilities to make sure that the kids who need in-person learning are getting those services and getting them safely. And that we are also making sure that our working harder than they probably have ever worked in their lives are doing that safely as well. Thank you.
Travis, thank you very much. Thank you for moving to a better spot. Next we have Emma. Emma, welcome.
Hi, I'm from Roslindale. I'm a freshman at the Boston Latin School, and I would like to thank Counselor George for opening this meeting. Now, I want to start by asking all of you counselors something. This is a statistic from the National Alliance of Mental Illness helpline. Why was there a 65% increase in calls, mostly from high schoolers? Now, I don't have the exact answer, but I'll pretty sure tell you, schools closed, schools went online. You know what? We talk about safety, we talk about the coronavirus. We never talk about mental health safety. We say, oh, social emotional learning. Walsh just says, oh, just go to a counselor. But I don't see where people care. Because when I go into school, when I go to my computer, I'm on the computer for 6 hours learning. My eyes are glazed over because I've been doing this for 20 days. And you know what? I was waiting. I was waiting to go to hybrid. But what is hybrid for my school, for Boston Latin School? You go into a room, you bring your computer, you bring your headphones, and you sit and you learn online while the teacher is teaching some other people online. Is this good for the suicide numbers? Is this good? You know, one in four 18 to 24-year-olds seriously contemplated suicide in the month of June. Okay, that's an important number. That shows that this is not safety. We are not talking about public health safety when we talk about opening windows, HVAC systems. No, we're talking about people's lives that are going to be lost from depression. When I go into school, I go into a room for 6 hours. I'm alone for 6 hours a day. Now, more than that, I still have homework. Yesterday, I spent 10 hours on that computer. 8 months ago, you would be worried about your kids spending 10 hours on the computer. You'd think they had an addiction. They had an addiction to social media, video games, whatever you want to call it. But now it's normal. I call on you, counselors. You have the agency to open the schools. Get the teachers that are willing to help these kids, because teachers are hurting too. And teachers are in pain right now. Students are in pain. And you, counselors, have the agency to say, you know what, this pain is not worth anything. this sacrifice is not worth this. It's not worth anything. Thank you for listening to me speak.
Thank you, Emma, very much. Shane, we have an iPhone on there. I'm not sure if iPhone is someone for public testimony.
Hi, Council. I'm not quite sure.
Anissa, it's mine. I'm sorry. It's Emma's mom.
Oh, hello. Would you like to give testimony?
Yes and yes.
Okay, if one of you could shut off your audio, it's offering a feedback loop.
I'm sorry, Anissa. I'm not prepared to speak yet.
That's fine. We'll put you on hold, and if you stay there for a little bit, I'll call you in a little bit. Next, we have Al Vega and Ruby Reyes.
I think Jody actually presented mass cautious testimony. I don't believe that we made that clear in our request to testify. So Jody covered all of the testimony on behalf of mass cautious, but Ruby does have something to add.
Thank you, Al. I see that Ruby is with us. Ruby, would you like to offer your testimony, please?
Yes, thank you. My name is Ruby Reyes, and I'm the director of the Boston Education Justice Alliance. Boston Public Schools is failing our high needs students. In creating reopening plans, BPS created plans for all students and all schools, rather than prioritizing students who had not received in-person services since March. When COVID rates hit 4.1%, Mayor Walsh and Superintendent Cassellius focused efforts on keeping schools open, despite going over the 4% COVID rate that they had agreed upon with the BTU. BPS then began to threaten teachers in order to stay open for the between 1,300 and 2,600 students currently attending in school in person, instead of developing a better plan or adopting the many safer suggestions made by parents, students, and the BTU. This led to the BPS and BTU fighting in court over defining safe schools. Through all of this, parents and teachers have been pitted against one another. There is still no long-term BPS plan for high-need students, and students continue to suffer from lack of services. BPS leadership, including central office, the mayor, and Walsh's appointed school committee are solely to blame. The impact of BPS's poor planning and lack of good faith negotiation has increased the opportunity debt for students with high needs who are overwhelmingly Black and Latino, and are the same students who struggled to access services last spring. Only 20% of students with disabilities, 24% of English language learners, and 18% of homeless students logged in at least 80% of the time. Among high school students, only 6.8% of special ed students, 5.5% of English language learners, and 3.5% of homeless students logged into their online classes at least 80% of the time. Furthermore, these numbers do not track whether students were able to engage in the work and make progress. They merely track that the student logged on. Parents, students, and the BTU have been advocating for compensatory in-person services since the spring, which BPS ignored. Despite many school committee meetings in which families and teachers overwhelmingly express their concerns, the plan by the district remains inadequate. There are 11,000 students with disabilities in BPS, 16,000 ELL students, in addition to increasing numbers of homeless students or students who are in foster care. Around 2,600 students are currently receiving in-person services so far. These numbers reflect a lack of identification, outreach, and communication with families about their educational options, and is reflective of the continued mistrust of school communities with BPS leadership. We saw a powerful expression of the needs of our students in September when over 100 families, teachers, and community members protested in a rainstorm to demand a plan for in-person services in safe spaces. The district's reopening plan, paused by Mayor Walsh due to the rise in COVID cases is woefully inadequate. Although some students with high needs are going into school buildings, many go into buildings where screens are placed in front of them rather than receiving in-person instruction or services, despite advocacy for a better plan. Since July, parents, students, and teachers expressed concerns about educators being required to teach both in person and online at the same time. This doesn't meet student, educator, or parent needs. The district needs to reorient how they are thinking about in-person learning and have a plan for what to do if city services are shut down. They have to stop relying on traditional school buildings and classes and think creatively about how to provide in-person services in safe spaces for high-need students. Currently, BPS has not had air quality tests that measure CO2 exchanges by an independent auditor to ensure that students and staff can safely be in buildings for extended periods of time, but instead is using box fans and an open window as a solution for ventilation when winter is quickly approaching. This cannot wait. COVID-19 cases are steadily increasing and our students cannot handle another interruption in their education. The plan needs to be developed immediately to prevent any more loss of education and developmental time, as parents, students, and the BTU have been advocating for since March. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ruby. And then, let's see. Next, we have Steve Abreu.
Counselor, he just emailed me. It might take him a second to log back on. Just to let you know.
Okay, we'll wait patiently for him. And then I don't think we have anybody signed up after Steve. So we'll wait for Steve to log in.
Hi, baby. You're so cute.
Councillor Asabi George, I see Stephen Abreu. He has his hand raised up. Is that who you're waiting for?
Yeah, Shane will take care of it. Thank you, Councilor Mejia. Welcome, Steve. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you. And thank you to you and your fellow counselors. We really do appreciate the opportunity to speak. I'm a parent of a kindergartner who goes to Mission Hill School in Jamaica Plain. And it's really frustrating. We just feel like the can is getting kicked down the road every week. And we're trying hard to plan, but we can't plan not knowing where we're gonna be in 1 week, the week after that. And I'd like to have a solution that prioritizes younger children who need to be with their friends in person. I don't think the remote style learning is working for kindergartners and probably first graders. So I understand that everybody has their own needs. The high schoolers have their needs, and I really appreciated hearing from the young woman who testified previously about what she needs. And we've heard a lot about the teachers and their concerns, but I just want to make sure that the voices of young children are heard, because they're obviously a very important constituency too.
Thank you, Stephen. I appreciate your testimony. Shane, I don't see that we have anyone else currently waiting for to offer public testimony. So colleagues, I'm happy.
That's right.
Thank you, Shane. And thank you for managing that on the backside. I am happy to send a text to colleagues when additional folks arrive for public testimony. And what I'll do is as individuals arrive, I'll ask them for a few minute grace period while I text everyone and have you all log back on. Sound like a plan? Excellent.
Yes.
Thank you.
That was great. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Shane, I'm going to stay here. I'll leave my audio on, but I'm going to mute myself just so you can't hear the chaos in the background.
That's good.
All right, Shane, we've hit 7:30, so I think that we should probably adjourn.
Sounds good to me, Counselor.
Do you just want me to adjourn the meeting? Or is that,
Yeah.
is it done?
Yeah, you can gavel out or join the meeting.
Okay. I do want to thank those that offered, excuse me, let me just mute that for a second. I do want to thank everyone who joined us for and offered public testimony today, who tuned in. Number of people that we heard from. We look forward to having you participate in our hearings coming up. With that, I'm going to adjourn this meeting. Thank you, Shane, for sticking it out with me.
Thanks, Counselor. We got Candace here too. Just want to give her a shout out.
Candace, thank you. Thank you, Candace.
Oh, you're so welcome.
Have a good night.
Have a good night, everyone.
Bye. Good night.